It was supposed to be the emotional climax of the night. The room was practically glowing, filled with fairy lights and the smell of Prosecco and Nova's favorite vanilla cake. This was her 30th, a big one, and we'd gathered all our closest people in her apartment, the one I helped her pick out. I stood in the center of the living room, a hush falling over our friends as they turned to look at me. In my hands, I was holding the real gift, a worn brown leather journal, its pages softened and yellowed by a decade of honesty. Our honesty, or so I thought. Okay, everyone, I started, my voice filled with a gravity I felt the moment deserved. As you know, Nova and I have been best friends for 10 years. And you can buy someone a necklace or a spa day, but I wanted to give her something real, something authentic. I looked over at Nova. She was beautiful, sitting on the edge of the sofa, her dark hair catching the light. She had this small, expectant smile on her face, but there was something else in her eyes. A flicker of confusion, maybe. I dismissed it. She was probably just overwhelmed. She gets that way. This, I announced, holding up the journal, is a record of our journey. It's not all pretty, it's raw and it's unfiltered. It's a testament to how we've pushed and pulled each other to become the women we are today. I was so proud of that line. It sounded profound, important. I was giving her the gift of our shared history, the ultimate proof that I knew her, truly knew her, better than anyone. And so, with everyone watching, I opened it to the first bookmarked page and took a deep, theatrical breath. I was about to give her the truth. You have to understand, our friendship wasn't built on just sharing clothes and gossiping about boys. It was deeper than that. I was the architect and she was, well, she was the beautiful structure I helped build. When I met Nova, she was a bundle of raw, untapped potential, wrapped in a thick blanket of self-doubt. She had these incredible ideas, these flashes of brilliance, but she'd second-guess herself into paralysis. That's where I came in. I remember when the posting for her current job came up. It was a huge leap, a senior role at a major publishing house, a place she'd only ever dreamed of working. Her first reaction was a flat, defeated, "No way, Thea, I'm not qualified, they'll laugh at my resume." I spent an entire weekend with her, not just encouraging her, but practically rewriting her cover letter, coaching her on interview questions, and physically sitting with her as her hand trembled over the submit button. I had to literally push her finger down on the mouse. She cried when she got the offer, full on sobbing into my shoulder. She said, "I couldn't have done it without you." And she was right. It wasn't arrogance, it was just a fact. It was the same with her disastrous ex-boyfriend, Patrick. A perfectly nice, perfectly boring guy who was slowly dimming her light like a cheap dimmer switch. Everyone saw it, but they were all too polite to say anything. They'd just smile and say, "Oh, you two are so cute together." Cute? Nova wasn't meant to be cute. She was meant to be a bonfire. I was the only one who had the guts to sit her down and give her the unvarnished truth. He doesn't challenge you, Nova, he placates you. He thinks your anxieties are adorable quirks. You're settling for comfortable when you were made for extraordinary. It was harsh, I know. She was furious with me for a week, giving me the silent treatment. But eventually, she saw that I was right. She ended it, and a month later, she admitted it was the best thing she ever did. I wasn't just a friend, I was her guide. I saw the map when she could only see the tangled mess of trees right in front of her. Over the years, it became our dynamic, our unspoken contract. She'd come to me with her anxieties, her half-formed dreams, her messy situations, and I would provide the clarity, the tough love. I was the one who pushed her to take up pottery, even though she insisted she had no artistic talent. Now her apartment is filled with her stunning, earthy creations. I was the one who convinced her to invest that small inheritance in a tech stock everyone else was scared of. It tripled in value, and that's what she used for the down payment on her apartment. I wasn't just cheering from the sidelines, I was on the field with her, drawing up the plays. I loved her for who she was, but I loved the woman I knew she could become even more. And I believed with every fiber of my being that my role was to relentlessly nudge, push, and sometimes drag her in that direction. The friendship to me was this beautiful decade-long project, and that night at her party I wanted to show her the blueprints. I wanted her to see how far she'd come with my help. The whole idea for the gift came to me a few weeks before the party. I was doing a massive clear out of my apartment, the kind you do when you're feeling stagnant and need to feel productive. Tucked away in a box of old university textbooks, I found it, the journal. I hadn't seen it in years. It was a cheap thing I'd bought at a campus bookstore, but I'd filled it cover to cover during our first year of friendship. I spent that whole afternoon on my floor just reading, and it was intense. The pages were filled with my frustrations, my unfiltered thoughts about Nova. I wrote about how her passivity drove me crazy, how I had to spend hours talking her down from some minor social anxiety. There was one entry from a decade ago that I remember so clearly. It read, "Spent 3 hours today convincing Nova she wasn't going to get fired for asking for a day off." 3 hours, God, I worry about her. It feels like my job to build her a spine, I just hope she lets me. Reading it back, I didn't feel a shred of shame, I felt vindicated, it was proof. Proof of the work I'd put in. It was a time capsule of the girl she used to be, and reading it made me swell with pride at the woman she had become, the woman I had helped her become. It was all there in my own handwriting, the raw material, the struggles, the intervention. That's when the idea struck me. It felt like a lightning bolt of pure genius. What could be more intimate, more powerful than sharing this? It wasn't just a gift, it was a performance piece. It was a way to say, look at us, look at this journey. We're so strong now, so solid that we can look back at the ugly, messy parts and laugh. It was the ultimate testament to our bond. It was a way of honoring her struggle and, yes, honoring my role in it. I thought she would cry, that she would hug me and say, "You've always seen the real me." I genuinely believed I was crafting the most profound birthday present she would ever receive. I bookmarked the most poignant, most brutally honest passages, convinced that this act of radical transparency would be the thing that defined our friendship for the next decade. So there I was, under the warm glow of the fairy lights, my voice resonating in the suddenly silent room. I started with an entry from the first month we knew each other. "Nova is like a beautiful, terrified bird," I read, my voice full of theatrical emotion. "She has these incredible wings, but she's afraid to even open them. I feel like I have to gently pry them open for her just so she can see she can fly." I glanced up, expecting to see a few knowing, teary smiles. Instead, I saw a sea of frozen faces. Our friend Reese was staring intently at his shoes. Another friend, Chloe, was tracing a pattern on her wine glass, refusing to look at me. The air in the room had shifted. It was no longer warm and celebratory, it was thick and cold and deeply, deeply uncomfortable, but I was committed. I was the director of this emotional play, and I wouldn't be deterred by a little stage fright from the audience. I plowed on, turning to another bookmarked page. "Had to spend 3 hours today pulling Nova out of another bout of insecurity," I announced, trying to inject a bit of fond exasperation into my tone, as if we were reminiscing about a funny, shared memory. She was convinced everyone in her seminar group hated her because no one commented on her presentation. God knows what she'd do without me to provide a reality check. I even read the part about her ex, Patrick. She's dating Patrick now. He's nice, I guess, but he's beige. He's the human equivalent of a low-fat yogurt. She needs someone who is a vibrant, full-fat tiramisu. I give it 6 months before I have to stage an intervention. A nervous cough broke the silence. I looked up again. Nova hadn't moved. She was still sitting on the sofa, her hands clasped in her lap. But the small, expectant smile was gone. Her face was a perfect, unreadable mask. The light in her eyes, the one that always sparkled when she was happy, was just gone. It was like watching a candle be snuffed out in slow motion. I read one final passage, the one I thought was the triumphant conclusion. 10 years from now, I hope she reads this. I hope she sees the girl she was and laughs. I hope she sees the friend I was, pushy and impatient, and forgives me. And I hope she knows I did it all because I saw the brilliant woman she was hiding from the world. I closed the journal with a flourish, a definitive snap that echoed in the dead air. I looked at her, my heart pounding, ready for the catharsis. The tears, the embrace, she just stared at me, nothing. The silence was the loudest sound I had ever heard. The silence stretched on, thin and brittle. It felt like an eternity. My triumphant smile started to feel stiff, like a mask cracking on my face. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. Where was the emotional release? The tearful recognition? All I got was a room full of people trying to breathe as quietly as possible and Nova just watching me. Panic began to prickle at the back of my neck. I needed to fix this, to explain the scene they were clearly misinterpreting. I took a step closer to her, my voice a little too loud, a little too strained. "Nova, it's a tribute," I said, forcing a laugh. "Don't you get it? It's a celebration of how far you've come, of how far we've come." She didn't blink, her expression remained utterly blank. The silence was no longer just an absence of sound, it felt like an accusation. I could feel the judgment of everyone in the room pressing in on me. They didn't get it. And if they didn't get it, it was because she wasn't reacting right. She wasn't playing her part. My panic curdled into a hot, defensive frustration. Why was she making this so difficult? Why was she embarrassing me in front of our friends? "Come on, Nova," I pushed, my voice taking on a sharper edge. "It's just honesty. We're better than pretending the struggle didn't happen. I was there, I saw it all, I'm the one who knows you best." And that was it, that was the line. As soon as the words left my mouth, I saw something shift in her face. It wasn't dramatic. It was a tiny, almost imperceptible change. A flicker of something hard and definite behind her eyes. She finally spoke. Her voice wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it wasn't tearful. It was quiet and clear and carried across the silent room like a shard of glass. "No, Thea," she said, looking right through me. "You're not." That was all, 2 words. But they landed with the force of a physical blow. The party disintegrated after that. People started finding excuses to leave, murmuring awkward goodbyes, unable to look me in the eye. The vanilla cake sat on the counter untouched. I tried to talk to her, of course. I followed her into the kitchen, my mind racing, trying to find the right words to undo the damage. "Nova, you're overreacting, you're being too sensitive." But she just turned her back to me and started methodically, silently putting glasses in the sink. The next few days were a blur of unanswered calls and read receipts with no reply. Finally, I sent a long, rambling text, full of justifications and half apologies. Her reply came almost instantly. It wasn't a conversation, it was a verdict. "You don't need to apologize, Thea," the text read. "You didn't do anything new. You just finally said out loud what you've been showing me for 10 years. You read a story about a project you were working on. Thank you for the honesty." It woke me up. And then the final message: "I need some space, please don't contact me." After that, I saw it, the little gray text under her name: "Thea, you were blocked." For a month, my world was just a feedback loop of anger and disbelief. I'd replay the scene in my head, and every single time I'd come to the same conclusion: she was the one who was wrong. It was a massive overreaction. A decade of friendship thrown away because she was too sensitive to handle a little bit of truth. I complained to anyone who would listen, painting myself as the victim of her inexplicable fragility. I was so wrapped up in my own righteous indignation that I couldn't see anything else. Then Reese called. "Hey," he said, his voice hesitant. "Can we meet for coffee?" Reese was our neutral territory, the Switzerland of our friend group. He'd known us both for years and had always managed to stay out of our minor disagreements. We met at a sterile, impersonal coffee shop halfway between our apartments. He looked tired. "Look, Thea," he started, stirring his latte with unnecessary intensity. "I'm not here to take sides, but I was helping Nova pack up some stuff yesterday." "Pack up?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "What do you mean, pack up?" "She's moving," he said quietly. "She took a transfer to her company's West Coast office. She's leaving at the end of the month." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Moving without even telling me, the anger flared again, hot and familiar. "So that's it, she's just going to run away." Reese sighed, finally looking up from his coffee. "That's not what I called you to talk about. While we were clearing out her closet, I found something. She'd asked me to drop it at a donation center, but I don't know, it felt wrong." He slid a small, beautifully wrapped box across the table. It was heavy, covered in elegant silver paper with a black silk ribbon. My name was on the tag, written in Nova's perfect, looping cursive. "She was going to give this to you for your birthday next month," Reese said softly. My hands trembled as I untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was a watch. It wasn't just any watch. It was a vintage, Art Deco timepiece we had seen months ago in the window of a ridiculously expensive antique shop. I had fallen in love with it instantly, tracing its delicate shape on the glass, but had dismissed it as a fantasy, something I could never afford. Tucked under the watch was a small, cream-colored card. I pulled it out. "To Thea," it read, "for the first decade of a lifelong friendship, thank you for always being there." I just stared at it. Ugh. The weight of the watch in my hand, the simple, sincere words on the card. It was a gift of pure, unadulterated affection. No strings attached, no lessons to be taught, no grand statements. Just love, and as I sat there, I held her gift in one hand and the memory of my own gift to her in the other. The contrast was so stark, so brutal, it finally shattered my defenses. It wasn't a hairline crack, it was a catastrophic collapse. I had stood in front of all our friends and presented her with a detailed invoice for my friendship, and all along she had been planning to give me the world. 6 months later, I was standing in a tastefully decorated barn, clutching a glass of overpriced champagne. Reese's wedding. It was the one event I knew I couldn't escape, the one place where our orbits were guaranteed to intersect again. I'd spent the entire week in a state of low-grade dread, rehearsing apologies in the shower, practicing a casual, unbothered expression in the mirror. And then I saw her. She was across the room, standing in a circle of people, laughing. It wasn't a polite titter, it was a full, head-thrown-back, joyous laugh. The sound of it seemed to suck all the air out of my corner of the room. She looked different, lighter, The subtle, ever-present tension I was so used to seeing in her shoulders was gone. She was wearing a simple, emerald green dress, and she wasn't just existing in the space. She was owning it, she was radiant. It was the woman I had always claimed I wanted her to be, and seeing it, knowing I had absolutely nothing to do with it, was agonizing. For a moment, I thought I could do it. I could walk over there, say something, anything. But as I watched her, I saw her friends listen intently as she spoke, saw the easy way she touched someone's arm, the relaxed confidence in her posture. She was a complete, finished masterpiece, and I was just some stranger across the room. Then, as if she felt the weight of my stare, she turned her head. Her eyes met mine. For a single, horrifying second, the world stopped. I saw a flicker of recognition, a brief, clinical acknowledgement that she knew who I was, and then nothing. There was no anger, no sadness. No lingering resentment, it was worse. It was a polite, distant indifference, the kind of look you'd give a vaguely familiar face in a grocery store. She gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod, the kind of gesture one makes to a waiter, and then she turned back to her friends, seamlessly rejoining their conversation and their laughter. She had dismissed me, not with a fight or a dramatic scene, but with the quiet, devastating finality of a chapter being closed. I stood there frozen, the champagne glass cold in my hand. The party swirled around me, a loud, happy blur. I had spent a decade convinced I was the main character in her story, the one holding the pen, but in that moment I finally understood. I wasn't even a footnote. I was just the idiot who had read the wrong book aloud, and she had simply, quietly walked out of the library.